Luka Doncic, the best player in the NBA. I started a series a couple months ago where I promised I would make a propaganda for every single player on the Dallas Mavericks roster, and I lied. But I figured, why don't we put a nice little bow on what we do have by rambling about 77 for God knows how long. I have no idea how long this video is going to be yet. We're about to find out. Luka Doncic, where should we even start? Luka Doncic is a Slovenian professional basketball player for the Dallas Mavericks of the National Basketball Association. He also represents the Slovenian national team. Born in Slovenia, Doncic shown as a youth player for... What the hell is this? This is a Wikipedia article. Who gave me this? Who's responsible? We have higher standards than that on this channel. What is there to say about Luka at this point that hasn't already been said a million times by anybody who's ever watched him, right? He's a complete and total marvel on the basketball court. As a Mavericks fan, I've watched probably every single game of his professional career, and even still, there are moments on a nightly basis where I'm left speechless by what I just witnessed. And even then, I think that Luka is maybe a little bit underappreciated. I wouldn't say underrated, because I don't think he's underrated, right? He's the betting favorite for MVP for, I think, the third consecutive year. He was just first-team All-NBA for the third consecutive year. But I still feel like we don't appreciate the fact that we are witnessing one of the greatest starts to a career in the history of the NBA. If you were to tell somebody that you think Luka is the best player in the league, you would definitely get some pushback. I would say probably 95% of people wouldn't agree with you, especially non-Mavericks fans. And that's fair. The league is incredibly deep right now. There's so many great players to talk about. But don't you worry, right? I'm here to give you all the propaganda that you need. Here's why Luka Doncic will be considered the best player in the NBA by the end of the season.
Here in the first half, stunning 27-point lead, down goes Johnson,
In order to understand what makes Luka so special as a player, we first have to understand what makes him so special as a scorer, because to me, that's his best and his most important trait. Sure, he might be a generational playmaker, which we'll get to later in the video, but all of that starts because of his insanely deep bag. I mean, he has so many different ways that he can beat a defense when it comes to scoring. You're not second all time in points per game in the playoffs by mistake. Let's break it down from the inside out. All right, Luka shot 73% at the rim a season ago, which was the best in the league among players who had a negative rim shot quality rating. What the fuck is this rating, you're wondering? I have zero clue, but I saw it in a spreadsheet, so you know it's legit. He gets no easy shots, right? He's not some rim running big who gets lobs above the rim. He's not a slashing wing who gets wide open lanes to the basket. He's getting tough looks every single time, and most of these looks are unassisted. In fact, 85% of Luka's makes a season ago were unassisted, which was the highest rate in the entire NBA. Now, some people will say that that's a bad thing, and trust me, we'll get to those guys later, all right? His finishing numbers are insane, and I guess my only real gripe is with Luka's finishing is that I wish he would finish at the rim a little bit more than he already does. He only attempted 3.66 shots at the rim per 100 possessions. You compare that to somebody like Ja Morant, who has very similar driving numbers, and Ja is finishing at the rim twice, even 3 times as much as Luka Doncic does. Out of the 18 players who had 16 or more drives per 75 possession, Luka had the third fewest shots at the rim, trailing only Ish Smith and Ricky Rubio, 2 guys who aren't necessarily striking fear in the heart of defenses. Part of this is because Luka likes passing out of these drives, right? He likes driving and kicking. He likes sucking in the defense, getting all of the defense looking at him and kicking out to a wide open teammate. It's a big part of the Mavs offense. But another reason is Luka has a legitimately elite floater game that he likes to go to, sometimes more often than finishing at the rim, right? He would rather just float one up, get a giant killer. I mean, who else in the NBA is hitting a buzzer beater game-winning floater 3? Have you ever seen some shit like this? Have you ever seen it? He uses the vertical spacing provided by the president of Canada, Dwight Powell, to terrify the defense into choosing between a floater or an easy lob. And more often than not, he's making the right decision. He averaged 48% on floaters a season ago, nearly 1 point per possession on these attempts. And his floater game is where he gets a huge number of his and ones, right? He gets defenders reaching in on the help, trying to strip the ball away, uses that reach in, boom, contact. I'm floating the basketball. It's an and one. A lot of time, these and one floaters are just crazy circus shots. They don't even make sense, but they go in. And I want to point out something. Look, Luka's not the most explosive guy, right? He doesn't have the first step of a Ja Morant or a Zion Williamson. In fact, a lot has been made over the years of Luka's shape and his athleticism. And look, Luka, I get it, right? I'm 27. I gave up a long time ago. But Luka is legitimately athletic, right? Maybe not in the traditional sense, but his de-acceleration is elite. His ability to stop and go, stop and go, stop and go on a dime, have 9 different speeds over the course of a singular possession, I really think it's unmatched by anybody in the NBA, and it's why defenders are so constantly off balance whenever they're guarding Luka. Not only does he have a bunch of different things that he could do to you, but he's going to have 15 different paces over the course of a game. You don't even have to ask me. Ask pretty much anybody who's been in basketball. The change of pace, it's probably the most difficult thing to guard. Now, pair that with his disgusting footwork, which is absolutely disgusting. I mean, we've seen him embarrass guys, right? Remember when he did the fucking merry-go-round around Devin Booker in the playoffs? I mean, this isn't even bad defense, but Luka he's going to spin a million times. But what about this one against Moses Brown, former Dallas Mavericks legend, where he has him completely confused as to what dimension he's playing the sport in with this pass fake, and he's just finishing over a guy way taller. And then you add in his elite strength. Look, I understand, like, we all kind of want Luka to lose some weight, right? When he comes into the season out of shape, it usually leads to bad things. We want him to improve his conditioning. But his size, it's what makes Luka, right? And let me just tell you this, right? As somebody who knows, Luka will never be skinny. Some of us were put on this earth to not be skinny. I'll just tell you that much. Luka's lower half is insanely strong, and we've seen him just completely and totally body guys. I mean, there were moments in the postseason where I was starting to feel bad for Mikal Bridges. Like, I legitimately was. It wasn't right. What we were seeing on the basketball court just didn't feel right. All of these traits make Luka next to unstoppable in the paint, and a lot of the times the only thing stopping him is himself when he's trying to foul bait and yelling at the refs and crying for calls. I really wish that he would try to finish through contact instead of flopping and throwing up some bullshit shot expecting a call. Like, it can get really annoying sometimes. I'll just say it. Kevin McHale once said something along the lines, and I'm paraphrasing here, that the reason why he was able to pull off all of the insane moves he did in the post was because the defenders had to respect his shot, right? He had the mid-range jumper. He had the turnaround jump shot. And because of that, he was able to do the up and unders and all the other crazy shit Kevin McHale did. The same can be said for Luka. And this is one of the most insane parts of Luka's career, right? He comes into the league as a rookie, and he has next to no mid-range game to speak of, right? He averaged 1.8 mid-range attempts per game his rookie season. That's fewer than JJ Barea. On top of that, he shot them at a very inefficient clip. Second year in the league, he averages 0.9 attempts per game on mid-range jumpers, less than a whole attempt per game. And then his third year comes around, and Luka enters the season and says, hey guys, not only am I going to shoot more mid-range jump shots, but I think I'm going to be elite at them. Like, I just decided in the offseason, I'm going to be an elite mid-range jump shooter. His third year in the league, he shot nearly 3 mid-range attempts per game in the regular season. Not some insane number, but compared to where he was earlier in his career, a huge jump. And he sunk him at a 48% clip. I mean, that puts him in elite category. That puts him in the elite tier. But in the playoffs, Luka averaged nearly 5 mid-range attempts per game on 48% shooting. Holy shit, man. Look at Chris's shooting numbers. Disgusting. Luka had the 4th best shooting percentage on mid-range jump shots out of the 15 players who shot 4 mid-range jumpers or more in the 2021 postseason. A guy who just added that into his bag randomly. He shot even more mid-range jump shots this past season, and while the shooting splits weren't great, the threat of this shot alone opens up things for not just Luka's scoring game, but for the entire Mavs offense, right? It just, so much attention has to be paid to him. No matter where he is on the floor, that so many things open up. And then you have Luka's ultimate threat, right? The step back three. It's funny because you look at Luka's shooting numbers and nothing like jumps out at you, right? He's 35% from three this past season. That's right around league average. Nothing too crazy. But then you factor in that Luka probably has the most difficult shot diet from three than anybody else in the NBA. It really starts to paint a picture of how talented of a shooter Luka is. He's in the 99th percentile in Basketball Index's three-point shooting talent grade, due in large part to his ability to create shots for himself and then sink those tough shots. He shot 37% on step-back threes a season ago, averaging 1.12 points per possession on these attempts. That's a good number. I mean, considering the difficulty, the degree of difficulty on these shots, that's a great number. Some of these are like 360 fucking no-scope threes. They don't make sense. You see them go up and you're like, no, what? Yes. Great shot. It doesn't matter who's defending him. Giannis Antetokounmpo, here, take this step back three. Rudy Gobert, here, eat this step back three in the closing minute of a huge game 4 on the road. I feel like I must mention the Dallas Mavericks lost this game. I have to be fair. I have to be fair. It's been a meme for a long time, but it really just kind of seems to be who Luka Doncic is at this point, where he makes the most difficult shot possible. An elite defender giving him a great closeout on a step back three, that shot is almost guaranteed to go in. A wide open catch and shoot three in the corner, that shit is a guaranteed brick. Like, it doesn't make any sense, but that's just the reality. Time to play one of my favorite games. Did Luka Doncic make this shot? Okay, here we have Kent Bazemore bowing down to Luka mid-play. No one within 10 feet of Luka Doncic. Tell me, did he make this shot? How about this moment? A few plays later, Kent Bazemore leaves to go to the locker room in the middle of the play. No one within the same zip code as Luka Doncic. Tell me, does he make this shot? There would be so many more highlights if Luka could just finish his ankle-breaking shots. Like, he never makes them. It's honestly kind of frustrating at times. The only one that I could really think of is Cam Johnson in Game 7. It will never stop being funny. It never will. How does he get so much space on his step-back threes? A lot of what I said earlier, that pace, right? The go fast, the go slow, the go fast, the hesitations, the dribble moves, right? You don't really think of Luka as having that deep of a bag when it comes to dribbling, but it is very deep. It's just his patience, his pace, all of the things that he can do, the ability to drive past you, the ability to post you up. It leaves defenders completely clueless, right? His ability to navigate around screens and just use screens relentlessly. It's how he's able to generate so much space on these step backs. Put this all together and you have one of the most elite scorers in the NBA, and in my opinion, the most unstoppable force in the league currently. Once his shot is falling, there's pretty much nothing you can do besides pray that he tires himself out in the fourth quarter, which is exactly what the Clippers did in the 2021 playoffs. He was eviscerating them so bad, their strategy was literally, all right, we're gonna let him kill us for 3 quarters, and we'll just pray that he stops making his shots in the fourth quarter. And that did lead to issues, which we'll talk about later. But Luka has led the playoffs in scoring 2 of the 3 times he's been there. And it's not like he's playing rollover teams, right? It's not like it's 1 seeds versus 8 seeds that barely made the playoffs. The Mavs played 3 top 10 defenses a season ago, and the Warriors and Suns were both 2 and 3 respectively. The Clippers were a top 8 defense in 2021 and a top 5 defense in 2020, averaging 32.5 points per game against defenses like this on good efficiency too. It doesn't make sense for a player this young. It's mind-boggling. You don't really expect those numbers out of anybody in the league, no matter how long they've been there. So to see this from a 4th-year guy, you see what I'm saying? It feels kind of underappreciated what Luka has done up until this point. Let's just put into perspective how complete of a scorer Luka Doncic is, okay? Here's a list of players who finished in the 99th percentile or better in shooting talent, playmaking talent, finishing talent, and isolation points per possession. Okay, are you ready? Luka Doncic. That's the end of the list. The only other player to do this in a single season since 2014 is, hilariously enough, James Harden, who Luka gets compared to all the time. And he did it 3 times in a row from 2018 to 2020. This is one of the best offensive peaks in the NBA over the past 20 years, what James Harden did in those seasons, right? He won an MVP, 36 points per game 1 year. Am I saying that Luka is at prime Harden levels right now? Let me just tell you this. I know who I'm picking in a playoff series.
All better. I'm not surprised.
I'm in the toxic wastelands of NBA Twitter. It's said that the toxicity levels here are so great, even half a second in the elements is enough to expose you to terminal levels of brain rot. But what we really need to look out for is the brain dead takes. Even slight exposure to these takes will drop your IQ score by 20 in mere Here comes one right now. Everybody get down. Everybody get down. Shh. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Everyone get down. There it goes. There it goes. That was a close one. I love Twitter with all my heart. I really do. But sometimes it gives me heartburn. It really does. There was a harmless Twitter thread a week or 2 ago that showed 2 insane Luka passes from a preseason game against the Orlando Magic that somehow turned insanely toxic. Here are the plays in this video. An insane behind the back pass to Reggie in the corner who misses, whatever. Shooters aren't going to make every single shot. And then an over the head pass, which is fine, but these always get gassed up whenever Luka does them. But, you know, to JaVale McGee, right? And everybody lost their shit over these 2 innocent ass plays. Do I want JaVale McGee shooting threes? No, not really. Would it be fun if you made them? Yes. It would be hilarious, actually. But it's preseason against the Magic. Yet somehow, this tweet spawned tweets about how horrible of an offense this is and how a team will never win with an offense like this because of a preseason game. A team that just made the Western Conference Finals because of a preseason game against the Magic. This singular tweet is not the reason behind this mini rant and why I have exposed myself to the toxicity levels of NBA Twitter. Every week or so, a thread pops up questioning if Luka's playmaking abilities are actually elite or if he just has the ball the whole possession and then kicks out to, you know, just a random open teammate. If you believe that, you're a fucking idiot. I'm just going to call it what it is. You don't know ball. You're a moron. There are fair critiques about Luka's usage rate, and I'll touch on all that stuff later, but Luka is as elite as a playmaker as it gets. Okay, I'm going to contradict myself here a little bit, but his playmaking is what separates him from everyone else. It probably is his best attribute. I think scoring is what sets it up. Scoring, his elite scoring level is what sets up his playmaking level, but he's still an unbelievably elite playmaker. It's what helps make him a generational young talent, a talent that we talk about in the same breath as some of the greatest players to ever play the game. You don't even need to believe me. Just look at the numbers. Luka's on-ball gravity ranking was the highest in the NBA by a lot. And his overall gravity was second only behind Steph Curry. And we all know how Warriors fans feel about Steph Curry's gravity. Do I understand what goes into these stats? No. Do I use them because they help me push my agenda? Absolutely yes. To go a little bit further into his gravity, Luka Doncic was double teamed more than any player in basketball last season. 18.5 possessions per game. 31% of his possessions were spent double teamed, and yet the Mavericks averaged 1.2 points per possession during double teams. That's an insane number. That's defense is basically saying, hey, we know you're probably going to get points here, but we would rather take our risk double teaming a generational passer than letting him do whatever he wants to our defense. Luka draws the attention of the defenses so much that it sets up things for his teammates, and sometimes it can be incredibly subtle. Take this play against the Jazz in the preseason, for example. Christian Wood comes to set a screen, pretty regular stuff going on here, yet Luka gets the slightest step on Lauri Markkanen, and now the Jazz have shit in their pants. They don't know what they're doing, right? Kessler's dropping. Christian Wood pops out, and this leads to an easy pick-and-pop opportunity for Christian Wood, who knocks down the three. This is why a lot of people think Christian Wood's going to have a huge season offensively this upcoming year. And then you have plays like this, right? Maxey comes up, pops after a screen. Luka drives. The entire Pacers defense is staring right into his eyes, knowing he's about to embarrass them, and he throws some crazy over-the-head pass to Maxey, who knocks down the wide-open three. I mean, let's just look at this frame right here. Every defender on the Pacers team is staring at Luka Doncic. Let's play another one of my favorite games. What the hell is Luka gonna do with this basketball? Let's watch this play against the Jazz. Go ahead and pause it right here. Luka has the ball under the basket with Lauri Markkanen on his back. Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie are wide open in the corner, and Tim is behind him on the wing. What is he going to do with the ball? If you guys somehow bounce pass it backwards to Tim Hardaway Jr. without looking at him, you would be correct. How about this play against the Miami Heat last season? Luka gets trapped 35 feet away from the basket. What is he going to do with this basketball? If you guessed a little touch bounce pass to a not open Dwight Powell, which leads to a wide open layup, you would be correct. If you haven't had the opportunity yet to watch Luka live, I highly recommend it. Okay, it's one thing to see the passing on TV. It's one thing to be like, holy shit, his vision is insane on TV. It's another thing to see it in person, to see it with your own two eyes, to see the court in front of you, the entirety of the court, and then see the passes that Luka makes. They don't make sense. You pair this otherworldly vision with this elite passing ability. A lot of that has to do with his size, right? Him being as big as he is allows him to make passes a shorter player just simply can't make. And all the attention he draws from opposing defenses. And you have one of the better playmakers in a long time. It's no coincidence that 3 of the 5 most open three-point shooters in the league last year were Dallas Mavericks. Dorian Finney-Smith, Reggie Bullock, and Maxi Kleber. And these guys are no slouches from 3. It's not like teams are like, yeah, just leave that guy wide open. We don't really care. These are like 40% three-point shooters. When Luka is on the floor, the Mavs as a team shoot 5% more threes than when he's off. That's the 4th biggest increase among point guards. And they shoot 3% more corner threes when he's on the floor. The 2nd biggest increase. Now, you might think that this is not necessarily a good thing. I know a lot of people really don't like how reliant on three-point shooting the Mavericks are, but it works. I mean, these are wide open looks. These aren't difficult shots for these shooters. These are more often than not wide open threes. The Mavs attempted the 2nd most catch and shoot threes in the playoffs last year, and among teams that made it past the first round, they were by far the most efficient, shooting nearly 40% on these attempts. They also shot more corner threes than any team in the playoffs, averaging 12 attempts per game while shooting 44%. Now, shooting variance is a real thing, so you might be a little bit skeptical thinking, well, there's no way they can keep this up. But again, you have to factor in these are wide open looks for good three-point shooters. I know this 5-out spam high pick and roll offense can be a little bit ugly at times, but when you have an engine like Luka, it can work. The Dallas Mavericks averaged 102.7 points per 100 possessions in half court this past postseason. The best in the entire NBA, over 7 points better than the league average of 95.4. Why is this stat important? Well, only 2 champions over the past decade were outside of the top 4 in this stat. The Milwaukee Bucks, who are a huge outlier, and the Toronto Raptors, who finished 5th. We know how much the NBA slows down in the playoffs, right? Only 3 of the 16 teams in the playoffs last year saw an increase in their possessions per 48 minutes. Those 3 teams, the Bulls, Timberwolves, and Grizzlies, combined to go 9-14 in the playoffs. Historically, this run and gun, let's not slow down offense, it just does not work come playoff time. And the Mavericks, who were the slowest team in the NBA pace-wise a season ago, and I do wish that the Mavericks would run in transition a little bit more, but they are built to succeed in the playoffs because they have an offensive engine who is at his best when the game slows down. I mean, I don't think anybody in the league plays at their own pace better than Luka. It's pretty much like him and Chris Paul. I want to talk a little bit more about Luka's passing. I couldn't find a good segue. I think the heat of this hazmat suit is melting my brain and I'm having a heat stroke. So I'm just gonna ramble on about it, okay? This is the most insane pass I've ever seen from Luka. It's absolutely insane. The mere fact that this ball somehow ends up in Reggie Bullock's hands half a second later doesn't even seem possible looking at this still. And it still seems impossible when you watch it in slow-mo. It just whizzes past everybody. It looks like it curves midair. Reggie wasn't even ready for it. I mean, just look at this pass. What the fuck? I also want to point out that Luka has to be the best skip passer in the NBA. I don't know if there are any numbers to back this up, but there's just no way he is. I did find some interesting NBA court optics stuff that maps out passes like this, and you see how often from this graphic Luka utilizes the skip pass out of the post. I compared this to other guys I would think are pretty good skip passers. Jokic doesn't do it as much as I thought he would, honestly. LeBron does it, but not as much as Luka. I knew Embiid would do it a good amount, but still, it doesn't have the frequency of Luka. Trae Young actually does this pass a lot more than I thought, right, on account of him being short. And these are the type of passes where if anybody else attempts these, right, it's like you're automatically cut from the team. If somebody else attempted a skip pass to the other end of the court and it gets picked off or something, like, you're getting booed. All this goes to show how deep Luka's playmaking bag is. I mean, how often do you hear people talk about a playmaking bag? You hear scoring bag, but what about a playmaking bag? He can make pretty much every single pass there is to make. Skip passes, live dribble passes, no looks, wraparounds, pocket passes, lobs. I mean, we haven't even talked about how great of a pick and roll ball handler Luka Doncic is. The Mavericks are consistently a top 5 pick and roll team in the NBA, despite the fact that, you know, I love Dwight Powell. Legitimately, I do. He's a good pick and roll guy. Like, he's a good roll man. He has been his entire career. But the Mavs haven't had anybody who would be considered like an above average rim runner or an above average traditional big throughout the entirety of Luka's career. Even then, the Luka Dwight pick and roll averages 1.17 points per possession. The Maxey Luka pick and roll averages 1.20 points per possession. I mean, that's pretty interesting, right? You sleep on Maxey's pop ability. It really does make you wonder. You have JaVale McGee, who is consistently like probably the best roller in the NBA by stats, at least. And now Christian Wood, a good roller and an elite pick and pop guy. I'm very interested to see how this is going to work out. If I had to choose one player to run my offense, one guy I had to build a team around, one guy who you give him the ball and you let him generate good looks, right? You don't have to worry about anything else. I can't think of a player I would pick other than Luka, right? Jokic is definitely in the conversation. Obviously, Steph, LeBron, all these guys are in the conversation. But the amount of great looks Luka generates, not just for himself, but for others, I mean, it's insane. You really have to watch to appreciate it. And if you think a kick-out pass to Reggie Bullock, a great three-point shooter in the corner, 10 seconds into the shot clock is bad offense, I don't know what the fuck to tell you. I don't know.
In the regular season, that record was identical to their home record, 21 and 15. And it's a good road start today. A drive by Luka, a finish.
There was an article posted recently by Fansided that had Ja Morant ranked as the best player in the NBA under the age of 25 over Luka Doncic. And the argument essentially boiled down to, I like watching Ja Morant. He's my favorite player. And you know what? I respect that. Game recognizes game, and I have to respect it. I figured I should start adding that element into my videos, right? Things that have zero tangible value. Things that you can't fact check and tell me I'm wrong. Things that you can't counter with an argument with facts. Things that you just can't even argue. Like, who are you to tell me I don't enjoy watching this guy play? Let's start with this one. Luka just has that dog in him. If you follow this channel, and you know, if you don't, you really should, right? We stream 5 nights a week during the NBA season. We watch all of the games together. It's a ton of fun. You should come in. We gamble, prize picks. We win a lot of money. We also post videos regularly, and also like the video. Lets YouTube know we're having a great time. You know that I think Luka has more fuck you in his game than anybody else in the association right now. It sounds silly. It's a little bit corny, right? Nobody knows what it really means. But in order to be an all-time great, in order to really reach that level, you just have to have a certain amount of fuck you in your game. You have to have a certain amount of killer in your game. Jordan had it, Bron had it, Steph has it, Kobe has it. All of these guys have it. Anybody who goes into the best team in the NBA's house in a Game 7 and has as many points as their entire team at halftime en route to a 40-point slaughter, all while laughing like a maniac and talking shit in a myriad of different languages, has that fuck you. Has that it factor. I've always said there are 4 types of Luka Doncic games, right? One where he's pouting and yelling at refs the entire time. If you get this Luka, you're pretty lucky. You're probably going to get a not-so-great Luka game where he's just frustrated the entire time. Then you have the friendly, happy-go-lucky Luka who's laughing around, you know, dapping up the opposing team, talking to the other team during timeouts. This is still a killer Luka. It doesn't have the same mentality, but don't let this smile fool you. Then you have the talk shit to random role players Luka. This is evil Luka. I'm talking players who average like 10 minutes per per game. Think of like the Terrence Manns. Think of the Mo Wagners. Luka picks a random player to target and just relentlessly hunts them until they're forced out of the game. You're probably fucked if you get this version of Luka Doncic. I mean, thinking back to that Clipper series, which yes, I know the Mavericks lost, but Luka played two very capable players, Zubats and Patrick Beverley, off the floor within like minutes of that series starting. Like their series was over pretty much before it even began. Then you get maniac Luka, and this is psychopath Luka. The bob the head up and down while laughing, running up the court. You guys know what I'm talking about. You fucking suck. You might as well not even show up to the game. Like, it's probably best for your career if you just don't even show up and play in this game. I mean, you have to factor in, like, players who elevate themselves in the playoffs. These are guys who you want leading your team. These are superstar level players. To be the best player in the world, you have to come out and play in the biggest moments. It's still insane to me what Luka did in the bubble against the Clippers as a 20-year-old. Right, the Clippers were the betting favorite to win the finals going into that season. He dropped 42 points in the game one, right? The most points ever scored by a player in their NBA debut. I think that's been broken by, I think John Morant broke it. I think Anthony Edwards might have broke it too. It's been broken since then. But at the time, it was the most. Then the monster 43-point triple-double and buzzer beater to win the game in game four, which tied the series. And the next season, he comes out against a Clipper team that wins it all if Kawhi doesn't get injured. I will go to my grave thinking this. That Clippers team was just rolling. And averages 35 points per game on 50% shooting, also while dropping 10 assists. I want to put into perspective how perfect that far superior Clippers roster had to play in order to beat, I mean, basically Luka Doncic, right? This video, I made it a point. This video, I do not want to drag down any Dallas Mavericks teammates. I think the Mavericks are more well-built than a lot of other people. I believe in their role players more than a lot of other people. Tim Hardaway had some huge moments in that series for the Mavericks. Dorian Finney-Smith was really good in that series. But the Mavericks were 49.5 points per 100 possessions better when Luka was on the floor in that series. I mean, he was backpacking. And Kawhi Leonard had to turn into a literal basketball robot to win that series. To beat a 21-year-old Luka Doncic, Kawhi Leonard had to play, I'm not exaggerating here, the best basketball I've ever witnessed from anybody ever on the planet. In the fourth quarter of Clippers wins in that series, 4 games, fourth quarter, tight games, Kawhi Leonard shot 100%. Through 4 games in the fourth quarter, 100%. He didn't miss a single shot. Not from the field, not from 3, not from the free throw line, 100%. You just can't sleep on a player whose game improves in the biggest moments, right? Not only do his counting stats increase, right? That's not rare. You see that usually because volume goes up, but so does his efficiency. He was a 28.3 points per game scorer in the regular season over the past 3 years, a 32.5 point per game scorer in the playoffs, a true shooting percentage of 57% in the regular season, and a true shooting percentage of 58% in the playoffs. The only playoff series where he's averaged under 30 points per game so far in his career was against the Jazz this past season, a series in which they won, and a series in which he was coming off of a calf injury, only played half the series. The only playoff series where he shot less than 47% from the field was against the Golden State Warriors this past postseason. And it's kind of insane that we're kind of all in agreement that was a bit of a letdown series for Luka Doncic, right? That was by far his worst series in the playoffs. And, the Warriors kind of got to him. And even then, he averaged 32 points per game on 23 shots. Like, that's the standard we have set. We're not talking like a 15-year vet. We're not talking about a 2-time MVP. We're talking about a 23-year-old player. And then, of course, you have all the international success, which would probably make Luka Doncic a Hall of Famer if he retired today. I know that sounds crazy, but there's a lot on his resume right now. The MVP of the second best league in the world is a 17-year-old. And in my record books, he has the most points in a single Eurobasket game ever, with the 47 that he dropped this past summer against France. The 63 points in 1957, that doesn't count. Dude was playing against disabled World War II vets.
Luka, take us through that final possession, baby.
Oh, shit. My bad. I don't know what to say, man.
Speaking of disabled, let's talk about Luka Doncic on defense. Look, if you're going to say a guy is the best player in the world, you have to at least address that player's weaknesses. You have to at least address their critiques thrown towards Luka. And the biggest pushback you're going to get from people whenever you talk about Luka is his defense, right? He's just not a very good defender. And I've done enough caping for this video, okay? And I'm not going to cape here. Luka is not a good defender. In fact, I personally think he's a bad one currently. Historically, the Mavericks have been much better defensively when Luka is off the floor, which is why his plus-minus numbers in the regular season, they're just super wonky for a player of his caliber. A lot of this has to do with the fact that Luka, he's a jumbo point guard. So from time to time, he's going to guard the other team's guard. If that guard is shifty or quick, Luka just doesn't really stand a chance. And I don't see that changing, right? Unless Luka's taking some experimental steroid that helps him run faster, I don't see that changing. And Mark Cuban, if you're not considering that, you're a dumbass. All right, we'll eat the 25-game suspension. We need steroids. But these things can be fixed over time, like effort, stuff like that. That can be fixed. Conditioning, that can be fixed. Luka is capable enough as an on-ball defender to think, he can become a neutral defensively. And when he's guarding other forwards, which is what he realistically should be doing every time down the floor, it's pretty good, right? He's more than capable of handling his own. But then we saw, the Suns series, early in that series, I mean, they relentlessly hunted Luka. And it's a credit to Jason Kidd for the defensive adjustments he made over the course of that series. But early on, it was ugly. I don't think he'll ever be a good defender. And the reality is he doesn't really need to be, right? Offensive talent like this, if you're just a neutral defensively, I mean, that's a huge plus. Like, you're going to be a huge contributor to your team. And outside of, the first couple games against the Suns, throughout his postseason career, Luka has been okay defensively, right? He's more locked in the playoffs than he is in the regular season, naturally. Again, is he good? No, I would not say that. I think there's some Luka stands would say, no, he's actually a good defender when he tries. I don't think that. But he can be a neutral defender. That's fine. What about conditioning? Yes, conditioning is a major concern. And if you follow the Mavs, if you follow Luka, you know this has followed him throughout his whole career so far. If Luka wants to seriously be in this conversation, if he wants to be the best player in the world, if he wants to go down as one of the best players of all time, if he wants to be a champion, if he wants to be an MVP, he has to take his conditioning seriously. And by all accounts, he's done that this past offseason. Like, he's coming into this season in shape. And last season, that was infamously not the case. While Luka was great in that series against the Clippers 2 years ago, his production absolutely fell off of a cliff in the fourth quarter. Game 1, 1 point on 0 of 5 shooting. Game 2, 4 points on 2 of 7 shooting. Game 4, 0 points. Game 5, 2 points on 1 of 8 shooting. You see where I'm going. Even this past season, the fourth quarter was the lowest scoring quarter for Luka. Improving his conditioning has always been like the number one thing Luka needs to do, because I think a lot of problems get solved by doing so, right? It'll help his efficiency. It'll help him closing out games, and it'll help improve his defense because he'll just have more energy to exert on that side of the ball. And if he does improve, like if he comes into the season in shape, and he's in shape throughout the entire season, yeah, he's going to be the best player in the league. Like, the Mavericks going to be good. He might win MVP, and he'll be the best player in basketball. What about the H word? Heliocentric. No, somebody's got to say it. Somebody's got to do it. This is the worst word in NBA lexicon. I hate it. I hate discussing it. I hate debating against it. I hate having a discourse with anybody who uses this term. It's the worst term to be introduced to NBA fans. In a lot of ways, I think the Warriors broke basketball, right? Obviously, whenever they're healthy, they're pretty much unbeatable. During the Kevin Durant years, they literally were unbeatable. It really wasn't even worth watching sometimes. But they absolutely obliterated NBA discussion. Now, everybody thinks that offenses should involve players sprinting around the fucking floor. You get an elevator screen. You get an exit screen. You get a pin down. Everybody just run around in circles, and then we'll do a dribble handoff. We'll find you, right? Draymond, we have one of the best big man passers in the history of the game. We're going to find you, right? Everybody thinks this is how every offense needs to look now. As if every team has the greatest shooter in NBA history, the greatest off-ball player in NBA history, and arguably the second best shooter in NBA history and the second best off-ball player in NBA history, and maybe the best passing big man in NBA history. It's fucking stupid. This isn't how teams, like, the Warriors are the Warriors because that's how they were built, right? That's what makes them so special. Can the Mavericks run this offense? No. It's stupid to think the Mavericks should do this. Can the brand of basketball the Mavericks run work? Can giving the ball to Luka, spacing the floor, spamming high pick and rolls? I don't know. I personally think so, but history hasn't been too kind to this type of offense. I'll agree on that. If you look at the highest usage rates in playoff history, Luka already has 2 of the top 3 seasons. And if you look at the top 20, Michael Jordan is the only guy on this list who won a ring. Now, do I think Luka Doncic can turn into Michael Jordan? But I will say this, and this might be controversial, I don't know. Luka's potential as an offensive engine, it surpasses most guys on this list not named Michael Jordan or LeBron James. Like, that's just the reality. And the game is rapidly changing, right? Unless you have these elite off-ball players and these elite shooters, most teams are spamming the high pick and roll while spacing the floor. It's an effective brand of basketball. As we talked about earlier, the Mavericks had the most efficient half-court offense in the NBA during the postseason. That's important. This is a brand of basketball that can work. And you look further into this list, this top 20 list, I mean, there are some guys on here that should have won. Braun, 2015. You could argue Kevin Love, Kyrie Irving don't get injured. They might win that series. Harden, 2018. A complete and total shit show. They shit in their pants in the playoffs. They should have won the finals that year. I'm not blaming that on heliocentrism, okay? I'm blaming that on Harden and Chris Paul being on the basketball team. It remains to be seen if this can work, right? But unless you have that second star, which don't listen to the Mavericks coach speak. I definitely think they would love to get a second star in here. But unless you have that second star, I mean, what do you want them to do? You want Reggie Bullock dribbling the basketball? You want Dorian Finney-Smith dribbling the basketball? I love those guys, but that's not what they do. That's not their game. We've already gone over this. The shooters on the team get more open looks than pretty much anybody in the NBA. That's what you want, and that's what you get when Luka is the center of your offense. And can Luka play off ball? This is another common criticism. I say yes, because it's my video. Okay, we're at that point. Yeah, he can. For some reason, it's never talked about. He already plays off ball a ton. I mean, the Mavericks do a ton of dribble handoff action, which is Luka playing off ball, coming off of screens, getting a dribble handoff, and then running the offense from there. But he's also shown some nice, some nice give and go potential. Like, that's sometimes there. He can be a smart cutter at times. The catch and shoot numbers, inexplicable. I don't understand them. This is a dude who shoots 37% on the most difficult step back no scope threes you'll see, but then shoots 32% on wide open catch and shoot threes, and then shoots 29% on corner threes. Make it make sense. Luka Doncic is already considered one of the best players in the NBA, but this year I think he makes that leap into the best player conversation and towards the top of it. I really do. The Mavericks will be better than most people think. If you watch his channel, I've said that a million times. Luka is a playoff riser. That's a rare thing. He's a playoff riser. Not a lot of guys do that. He seems to be in shape heading into the season, and I'm excited to see what else he's added into his bag. Every year he comes into the season with something new, something you didn't expect him to add to his game. He's still developing as a player. I mean, it's exciting times. It really is. It's exciting times across the entire NBA, man. There's so much insanely good talent that it's hard to sit here and be like, yeah, Luka's the best player in the NBA. Giannis is insane. Jokic is insane. Steph is still insane. Bron is still insane. KD is still insane. Embiid is insane. So much great talent. Luka even being in this conversation is incredible. Anyways, I'm always bad at ending videos, so I'll leave you with this.